Nidobak, Indela Wasin, Denise Pulio, Sagamasqua.
Kwai, Nandela Wasin, Paul Pulio, Sagamore, Cowasuck Band of the Pennacook-Abenaki People.
Hello, friends. My name is Denise Pulio, and I'm the head female speaker.
And I am Paul Pulio, the head male speaker and chief of the Cowasuck Band of the Pennacook-Abenaki People. We welcome you to the documentary film Swimming Upstream, Indigenous Environmental Justice for Our Waterways.
As we begin this film, we ask you to join us in acknowledging the spiritual and physical connection the Pennacook, Abenaki, and Wabanaki peoples have maintained to the Aki, land, Nibi, water, Olakwikak, flora, and Awaasak, fauna, residing on Indakina, our homelands, for over 12,000 years and countless generations.
We, the Elnambak, the original indigenous human beings of Nandakina, ask you to acknowledge the hardships that we all continue to endure after the loss of our sustainable indigenous environmental practices of these our unceded homelands and waterways. We, the Elnambak, seek your assistance to help foster healthy relationships and opportunities that strengthen the well-being of all living things and beings as we continue to carry forward the stewardship traditions of our indigenous ancestors.
Kitsi Olioni Kitsi Nawask, Ta Nimikwaldaminana, Olido Goangan. Great thanks to Creator, the great mystery. We remember still, thanks to our relations. We began this film with a traditional Abenaki welcoming song. Since the time before contact, this song was sung at the beginning of gatherings to draw people together. I sang, "Peaceful hello." Peacefully, we reach out. Peaceful hello. Peacefully, sit a while. Peaceful hello. Choose a long peace. Peaceful hello. A superior lasting peace. A superior, lasting peace through sitting, sharing, listening, and connecting with each other just like we are doing today.
We are all created by a mysterious, life-giving force that we call Creator, and Creator made us all equal regardless of species. It is an ancient Abenaki teaching that it does not matter to Creator what community or nation we live in. We all live together in the greater community of beings, and as such must follow Creator's instructions to live and share these lands, waters, and air together in peace and respect with all living things. It is through the work of communication, cooperation, and sustainability that we maintain our families, our culture, our community, and our planet, our Earth Mother. We encourage you all to continue in the way of our ancestors by connecting with each other, to learn, to show compassion, to help and empower each other, but most of all, continue to love and preserve all forms of life.
It is our responsibility to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. Maintaining clean, flowing rivers and streams sustains all life and protects all our future generations. We have the opportunity to better our environment or quality of life and, in turn, better ourselves.
As we stand on the shore of the Great Bay Estuary in New Hampshire, we introduce you to some of our extended relations, the fish and the water. Without them, we would not exist. We depend on each other, and what we do to them, we do to ourselves.
The river herring swims the great expanse of the Atlantic Ocean of the eastern seaboard, from Florida to Maine. The blueback herring, who are silvery in color, have a series of scutes, spiny scales along their bellies, and are characterized by deep, bluish-green backs. The alewife, whose front of the body is deep and larger than other fish found in the same waters, have larger eyes, greater body depth, and pearly to white peritoneal linings. Both the blueback herring and the alewife can reach a maximum length of approximately 16 inches, but have an average length of about 10 inches. Together, these two species are often regarded collectively as river herring. Little is known about the river herring's marine life in the depth of the cold winter waters of the western Atlantic. However, If they survive to maturity, typically 3 to 4 years for males and 4 to 5 years for females, where they have avoided their predators such as cod, haddock, and striped bass, these fish will travel through the ocean currents into the calmer waters of estuaries, where the tide meets the stream. This tidal mouth will usher them into a large river. Aquatic animals which migrate between salt and fresh water, such as this, are known as diadromous fish. The alewife and the blueback herring's particular journey of living mostly in salt water of the sea, then traveling to fresh water of rivers, classifies the river herring as anadromous. The river herring finds its way to the fresh water in spring, April to June, in order to spawn. Both the male and female of the species make their journey upstream as the water temperatures rise, as winter thaws. Unlike salmon, river herring do not jump, but they can swim immensely fast to make their way through rapids and rough water. During spawning, the female produces between 60,000 and 100,000 eggs, which are deposited over the gravel, stones, logs, or other objects of the riverbed. Alewives spawn in slow-moving waters. Bluebacks spawn in the main stem river or stream. Once the eggs from the female and milt from the male have been released, the majority of the surviving spent adults make their way back to saltwater. They leave a new generation of river herring behind to hatch. The juvenile river herring live in the fresh water near estuaries for 3 to 7 months before migrating downstream to the ocean. The life cycle of the river herring is thought to have occurred for millennia in waterways of the eastern coast of the land we know today as New Hampshire. The anadromous species navigated the Piscataqua River and entered the estuary of the Great Bay before dispersing into the many rivers including the Bellamy, Squamscott, Lamprey, and Oyster. The abundance of this area is documented through the oral history of the peoples which called this land Ndakina, our homeland. The Pennacook-Abenaki and Wabanaki people have called this land, Ndakina, their home for more than 12,000 years. Archaeological evidence and oral history document a diverse and rich lifeways here, including settlements, fishing and hunting locations, and areas where trading occurred, first between tribal nations and then with European citizens as early as the 1500s. The Great Bay has been a source of life and livelihood for millennia, and when looking at the calm waters today, it is hard to imagine the complex relationships between all the living organisms that call this land, water, and air their home. River herring are vital to the ecology of freshwater, estuarine, and marine environments. Both alewives and the bluebacks connect our ocean, rivers, and lakes by providing nutrients and forage needed to make healthy watersheds. As the river herring migrates through these distinct habitats, it becomes part of a complex ecosystem in which it provides nourishment for countless other species. River herring are enjoyed by striped bass, bluefish, tuna, cod, haddock, American eel, seabirds, bald eagle, osprey, great blue heron, whales, seals, otter, mink, fox, skunk, weasel, raccoon, fisher, and turtles. Additionally, the river herring has nourished the people which have fished them throughout history. The waterways and surrounding land of what would become the Seacoast region of New Hampshire contains archaeological evidence that proves permanent indigenous settlements were located here, in Ndakina. After long, harsh winters, individuals would move in familial bands from the mountain regions to the coastline. Here, they would build wigwams for dwellings and gather food from the Aki, land, and Nebi, water. The geography along the Piscataqua River and around Great Bay provided abundant fishing, nut-bearing trees, and berry bushes. The flat land along the river banks may have been used for agriculture. On a consistent, seasonal basis, the rivers brought the early inhabitants to this area. At this time, fishing weirs would have been used to catch the river herring, which would have then been used as either bait for other fishing, including lobstering, or for consumption. River herring are easily smoked as a means of preserving the fish for later in the year. A weir is an obstruction made typically of wood or stone, which is placed in tidal waters to direct the passage of, or trap, fish. The river herring, who were swimming downstream after breeding, would become trapped in the barrier during low tide. Weirs were not fixed structures and would be removed seasonally to ensure that juveniles could migrate to the ocean. For indigenous communities, the earth and its abundance is a sacred resource. The land, water, and air must be cared for as it supports life, where each of those elements must work in harmony with one another. For the people of Indakina, this fostered a sense of stewardship among the community, one where all living organisms are sustained through reciprocity. The native species of Indakina were balanced in an ecosystem which relied on care. Otherwise, the rich abundance of the habitat would be depleted and one day may disappear. During the earliest inhabitation by people of the land surrounding Great Bay, during the spring migration, the river would likely glisten and glitter with the silvery skin of alewives and blueback herring. Their numbers were in the millions. Although natural predation causes only a small percentage of mature fish to return to their natal rivers to spawn, the quantity of the species was always in balance with the natural dangers it faced. This balanced ecosystem, which included people, was disturbed by the arrival of colonial settlers from Europe. The river herring population has been in decline ever since. By the 11th century, Norsemen had traveled to Iceland and Greenland. From there, they traveled to what they called Vinland, now Labrador, Newfoundland, and potentially other parts of New England. It is possible that some made it as far south as the Piscataqua River Inlet, or the Merrimack, where if they landed on the shoreline, they would have encountered the Pennacook-Abenaki and Wabanaki peoples, as well as other tribes of the Wabanaki Confederacy. As early as the 1500s, traders from across the Atlantic had been coming to the eastern coast of Indakina to barter and bargain with indigenous peoples. This first contact began to make monumental shifts to the indigenous populations and their way of life. Across the Americas, it is estimated that an indigenous population of over 60 million individuals were confronted with warfare, famine, slavery, and diseases including smallpox, typhus, measles, influenza, and diphtheria. Approximately 90% of the indigenous population is said to have died during the 1600s, a period now known as the Great Dying. The Abenaki in New Hampshire began to decline in the late 1600s, and those who survived either left for Canada, retreated to rural parts of the state, or integrated with the new settlers, as they introduced the Western idea of land ownership. On a map produced by an English merchant in 1667, it shows waterways of the river herring, the Piscataqua River leading to Great Bay, then splintering off onto the tributaries of the Bellamy, Squamscott, Lamprey, and Oyster Rivers. The map depicts colonial homes, known as garrisons. This area is described on this document as Durham Plantation. As had the indigenous population before them, the colonists, predominantly of English descent, found the area surrounding Great Bay to be conducive to settlement and could sustain life and livelihoods. Unlike the native peoples, however, the colonists' approach focused on controlling the land for their own benefit and often profit. Central to the colonial settler mentality was the notion of divine right, as claimed in the papal bull, Inter Caetera, issued by Pope Alexander VI on May 4th, 1493. which played a central role in the Spanish conquest of the New World. The bull stated that any land not inhabited by Christians was available to be discovered, claimed, and exploited by Christian rulers, and declared that the Catholic faith and the Christian religion be exalted and be everywhere increased and spread, that the health of souls be cared for, and that barbarous nations be overthrown and brought to the faith itself. This doctrine of discovery became the basis of all European claims in the Americas, as well as the foundation for the United States Western expansion. This notion of manifest destiny, which would later be aligned with American exceptionalism, was held similarly by the Puritans, which came to Indakina in the 1600s. The leading figure in the founding of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, John Winthrop, gave his Dreams of a City on a Hill sermon in 1630, which claimed the establishment of a virtuous community as a right for all Christians who sought to settle land which had been home to people for thousands of years. So, when in 1649 the first water privilege was unjustly granted to Valentine Hill, he wrongly believed it was his right to build a timber dam and mill at the lower falls of the Oyster River. For the first time in thousands of years of human history in the region, there was no ebb and flow between fresh water of the Oyster River and the tidal water of the Great Bay Estuary. The many species of fish and wildlife that migrate between the two could no longer move freely from river to sea through the different phases of their life cycles. Sediment flowing from the landscape built up behind the dam, unable to be scoured from the river channel in heavy rains. Water quality worsened in the Oyster River as the mill pond became shallower, warmer, and more depleted of life-giving oxygen. As centuries passed, multiple iterations of the original dam helped drive the economy of the town and the region. But the dam that remains today provides no power. It is structurally deficient and is considered a hazard by regulators. Since settlers arrived, they began telling the story about the dying indigenous cultures and marking history only from their own first point of contact. However, the history of this land is rich and vibrant. Neither the river herring nor the indigenous people of Indakina have disappeared. Their lifeways have been compromised, but their cultural vitality is strong and everlasting. This is due in part to the power of communities coming together to continue the stewardship of land, water, and air, which supports the lives and livelihoods of us all. Similar to the granting of land and water to Valentine Hill, the tributaries of the Great Bay were unjustly divided among the earliest colonial settlers. Dams, like the 1638 Great Dam on the Exeter River, where it becomes the Squamscott in Exeter, the 1873 Sawyer Mill Dams on the Bellamy River in Dover, and Cromick Creek Culvert in Newmarket, were all erected in order to benefit individuals. Although the economic benefits of milling, which would likely have been impossible without the dams, supported the growth of many of the towns of the seacoast, it is vital to understand the environment and personal costs of the construction of these barriers. The Great Bay Estuary is one of 28 places recognized by the United States Environmental Protection Agency as an estuary of national significance. However, the watershed is not the abundant ecosystem that it once was. This is in large part due to existing barriers, such as the Mill Pond Dam. In recent years, communities have come together to remove barriers such as the Sawyer Mill Dams, the Great Dam, and the Cromick Creek Culvert in order to restore the tidal river system. Several years of successful restoration of river systems is evident through qualitative data collection. This is never an easy task, as individuals have to come together to consider the past that should be recognized, the present, which must meet the needs of a community, and the future, which must foster a sustainable ecosystem for all living in their jurisdiction. The river herring has long been a marker for understanding the health and vibrancy of the Great Bay ecosystem, which includes the people who have called this land their home for over 12,000 years, up through present day. For over 150 years, Granite Staters have understood that their environmental impact on the land and waterways was negatively affecting the health of their communities. A New Hampshire Fish and Game report from 1857 lists a number of causes for the decline and final elimination of some of these diadromous fish. The inability to regulate commercial fisheries, unregulated harvest of adult shad and salmon on their spawning grounds, destruction of juvenile fish by the numerous mill dams, and the construction of impassable dams. In 1864, the New Hampshire State Legislature adopted the first Fisheries Commission from Massachusetts and New Hampshire to investigate the restoration of migratory fish. Instead of the millions of fish which illuminate the river with silvery streaks in spring, the numbers have depleted to the tens of thousands. This number may keep decreasing if action isn't taken. As the fish decrease and the water quality continues to decline, what does that mean for the rest of the ecosystem? For the people who live, work, and play on and around the Great Bay? Removal of a dam does not mean erasing history. It means acknowledging the full depth and breadth of history which this region has. Looking down into the depth of the ocean, we see the river herring as part of our community. Looking back into the breadth of human history, we see Indigenous individuals as part of our community. Dam removal is part of caring for the only land we have. Dam removal is part of recognizing the role we play in ensuring those who have lived and continue to live on this land can do so justly. Landscapes and waterways change. Impermanence is part of life and living for all of us. With change can come discomfort, sadness, or fear. What has been lost through time, conflict, or ignorance must be grieved by individuals and communities. But before more is lost, individuals in a community should come together in order to see themselves as part of the vast and vibrant ecosystem that surrounds them, past, present, and future, land, water, and all life forms.
Hello, my name is Bishop Rob Hirschfeld of the Episcopal Church of New Hampshire. In baptism, through water and the Holy Spirit, we promise to strive for justice and peace among all people, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. In the prayers of baptism, we are also reminded that water is a sacred gift from God for creation. For these reasons, our church, the Episcopal Church of New Hampshire, has chosen to sponsor this video about the importance of the Great Bay. This film teaches us about the importance of water in our state, and specifically about the importance of the Great Bay to the Indigenous Abenaki culture and to the countless creatures who live and move through its waters. We hope that this video will stir you to reflect upon the importance of the Great Bay, the importance of justice, and the importance of caring for the gift of water.
Holy Oleoni, Katina Wask. Oleoni, Katina Wask. Dandakina, away, away. Oli, do wong gone, away. Oleoni, Katina Wask. Oleoni, Katina Wask. Nanakina.